is going on, guys? Jim from Import Image Racing, and welcome back to the channel. On this week's video, we're going to be installing a rear sway bar and end links on our 2021 Subaru WRX. So stick around and find out what I chose, why I chose it, and if I think it's a good option for you to upgrade for your build. Here we go, gang. Another bright and sunny day. Gonna get to work on the 2021 WRX. And hey, I just washed this thing yesterday in anticipation for this video. And then, of course, it started to rain. Man, and take a look. That was all dirty again. See, that's why we can't have nothing nice, you know? The water spots everywhere. Anyway, that's going to be my problem later, but let's get to the products that we're putting on today. Like I said, we're going to be installing a rear sway bar and kind of accompanying that with a set of Whiteline sway bar end links for the rear, but our sway bar itself is the Superpro solid 22mm rear sway bar. The first question might be, why would I upgrade the sway bar? And that is a great question. If you're going to be running these things pretty hard and driving them, you know, through the corners and doing all that kind of wild stuff, why would you want to upgrade your sway bar? Long story short, the reason we want to upgrade that is to eliminate or at least get a good handle on the body roll. So when we go through corners, the car is going to want to pitch and roll a little bit, even though we have the suspension set up on there. Because this is an independent suspension front and rear, we have 4 different ways that these wheels are going to be moving through corners. So what our sway bar is going to do is tie those front and rear wheels together. So as we go through corners, it kind of eliminates this pitch and roll scenario. And depending on how thick the bar is or where we put the bar on our adjustable end links. As you can see, we have 3 different ways here. We'll cover more of this stuff once we get it on, but depending on how you set this thing up is going to be more or less body roll as we go through the corners. What you might have noticed from my videos before, I don't do a whole lot of really aggressive cornering, at least not on video, and for the vast majority of the stuff I do is drag racing and drag racing accessories.
Propane and propane accessories.
Let's quickly touch on the benefits I think I should see from a drag racing perspective with a rear bar. The thicker bar is going to help alleviate any sort of wheel hop I might get from the rear of the vehicle. Now, this car does not really have enough power at the moment to really worry about wheel hop, but I will be upping this power level in the very near future, and I do enjoy kind of building the car around the chassis and suspension before I start throwing all kinds of horsepower at it, and that really just helps me dial the vehicle in so that I'm not spending a whole bunch of time worrying about, you know, the car hopping around or having to kind of relearn how to drive the car with more power. It's just kind of already dialed in, and then once we kind of up the power level a little bit, it just feels nicer behind the wheel, and I think there's a lot less of kind of like a learning curve when it comes to going fast. With that being said, we're going to go into a little bit more detail once we get the old bar off, so I can kind of show you the difference between the old bar and the end links and the new bar and the new end links. Let's get this thing up on the jack stands, get the wheels off, and take a look at what we got going on. Now, this is an interesting find. Well, kiddies, you have caught me. I have made a very large mistake. Take a look at this tire wear. Man, that's god-awful. I mean, this is pretty much ruined, and that's pretty much brand new. Of course, it's basic knowledge that when you lower the car that it's going to adjust the alignment, and it's never for the good. But full disclosure, I have all kinds of parts that I knew I was going to be putting on this car front and rear, so I wasn't in a huge race to get this thing aligned. And then, you know, just life in general, you drive the car more, time passes, and you don't really think about it. But then, you know, you go ahead and pull a tire off, and it's completely destroyed. Now, I've pulled the other side tire off as well. Doesn't look anywhere near as bad, but unfortunately it's pretty toast still. So I'm going to go ahead and have to get 2 new tires. And spoiler alert, I guess, my next video is going to be lower control arms for this vehicle so I can get this thing out to the alignment shop, get it dialed in, and I stop just running through tires like that, especially now knowing it's costing me all this money. Like, look at this money I could have been spending on performance parts, and now I need 2 new tires. Crummy. You live, you learn. But I'm glad that we work on this car, because if we didn't and we just, maybe had somebody throw the coilovers on and just drive it until, I blow a tire out, that would be bad. This is another great aspect of working on your own car. Since you're constantly touching it, you're constantly, fiddling around. When you have issues like this, you can catch them before it leaves you on the side of the road. This still doesn't deter us from putting our brand new sway bar and end links on, so at this point, time to wipe away the tears, and we're going to get back to working and getting our sway bar and end links off the car. All right, well, out with the old, in with the new, right? Excellent. Like I had mentioned, this bar is the Superpro 22mm 3-way adjustable solid bar. Now, all those numbers probably don't mean a whole lot to you unless we have a reference point. So right off the bat, we're going to go ahead and measure our factory rear sway bar and see what kind of difference we have between that and our new 22mm bar. This comes in at right around 19 millimeters of bar thickness. Now, just to check on Superpro, let's make sure they are telling the truth at a 22 millimeter bar. And they're pretty much right on point with 22.37 millimeters of diameter. But diameter is only one part of this equation. On top of the increased diameter on the bar, we also have our 3-way adjustable stiffness. So, all the way out closest to the end of the bar is going to be the softest setting, the medium is going to be the middle setting, and then the hardest stiffness for the bar is going to be closest to the rear of the vehicle. On top of that, we're also replacing these factory rubber bushings with the Superpro poly bushings, which will definitely kind of help with deflection as the bar and everything moves in the way it's mounted to the rear of the vehicle. Then to close everything out, we are also upgrading our end links to these heavy-duty Whiteline end links. This will also be a great upgrade because it's going to get rid of this kind of like pivot ball motion here. So as everything's kind of flexing one way or the other, even though everything is in good working order here, you still got to get this motion, this swivel here, which we're going to be getting rid of with this particular mount. Another thing I really enjoy about this particular Whiteline mount is the fact that when you normally upgrade to a stiffer sway bar end link that has these polyurethane bushings, depending on where you place it on the sway bar, you're going to kind of twist it this way or twist it that way, and that can be pretty bad on these bushings. What I do like about this is this whole thing here slides, and on top of that it comes with these spacers right here in the kit. So if you want to run this dead on our middle mark, we can put a spacer on one side and a spacer on the other side like this. Or if you want to run it on the stiff or non-stiff setting, you can kind of push it and double stack your spacers this way or that way. So when we put it in the control arm, it centers our end length so we don't have any kind of weird twisting of the bushings, and that's going to keep everything nice and tidy for a long time. So why did I choose the Superpro sway bar? Easy. It's affordable, it's available, and I think it's a pretty nice piece. The powder coating on it is good quality. Our bushings, our poly bushings are great quality, and I do like the fact that it's a 22. You can also up this to a 24 millimeter bar, although I think that's getting a little bit too aggressive for my particular taste. If you're going to oversize the bar, things like tire compound and your suspension setup are going to become a larger factor with just the way the car handles going from A to B. So I do think that a 22 millimeter solid but adjustable bar is right in the wheelhouse where you're going to want to be for most of your applications. The last thing to talk about is hollow bars. There are some manufacturers out there that have some pretty thick bars, but they're hollow. That's for more like racetrack-oriented guys who are really concerned about weight. They kind of oversize the bar, but they lighten that bar up by, making it hollow. One of the huge downsides for that is the fact that it kind of takes up a lot of space under the car. Also, they're a lot more prone to breaking over time if you're just kind of driving it around, and I would stay away from hollow bars unless you're, a time attack guy or spend a lot of time on the track, especially since we found out with our tires today. Pay attention to what's going on under your car, because a lot of times stress fractures can occur and you might not know it. Then you're going to end up with a broken piece. Nobody likes that kind of stuff. There you have it. I think we learned a lot about our bar and our end links today. Let's get to installing it. Okay, we've got everything in. Tried to get some good footage of putting our end links in. Unfortunately, there's just not enough room back here, and I didn't think you wanted to see 10 minutes of just my back. So, we just got them on there for you, and so you can get a good look at what's going on. Full disclosure, since we are working with bushings and suspension-related parts, although all of our hardware is in, it is still loose. We're not going to do a final tighten on any of our end link hardware until we get the wheels on the hub and the weight of the vehicle down onto it. And that's just going to help from, if we tighten these bushings up now and then we start to compress the suspension, you're going to get some twisting and some motions in there that we're not really going to be too keen for in the future. With that being said, we did happen to tighten our sway bar bushings there, so everything there is tight. For the life of me, I tried to do this without dropping the exhaust system, which I would normally do, but on my back here, I'm not really too psyched about it, but I fought that for quite some time. I ended up just kind of dropping the rear section down a few inches so I could slide the bar in and out. I do recommend that, or you're just going to be fighting it, for a lot longer than you really need to. But looking good, looking fresh. Oh, one other thing that I wanted to show you. I know I had mentioned about the spacers before where, one spacer on this side, one spacer on that side would center you up, but I happened to notice when I was putting it together, if I had that, it would really kind of put the bushing much closer to our full stiff hole than it would the medium hole. So I did put both of our spacers on the side facing the rear of the car, and that put our end link dead center with our middle hole. We're going to run it like this, and I don't expect there to be any problems, but everything is nice and clean, so we're going to do a final tighten after we put our wheels on, and then we're going to go drive this thing and, probably draggy it. Not that I expect to make any time here, but I just love beating on this thing, man. That's what these cars are for. Give it a rip. Let's do it. All right, we're looking good, feeling good. It doesn't get much better than working on your own car and just the gratification you get just from, having something you want to put on, then you put it on, feels great. The biggest question, how does it feel out on the street? And, did it do any better on the draggy? Okay, so maybe you don't care about the draggy as much as I do, but it is really cool to put any kind of parts on your car and seeing if you actually get a real performance gain or if it's just something that, feels better behind the wheel through cornering. Let's get behind the wheel and see how it feels. Oh yeah, I'm big time happy. Now another full disclosure moment. I knew that going into this. I've worked on enough of these cars, I've put enough different kinds of suspension components onto these cars, so I've got a good idea of what to expect when doing modifications like this. But a good, solid 22mm bar in the medium setting with an upgraded end link just feels fantastic. My goodness. Long sweeping corners. I mean, you can just up that mile an hour a bunch. The way this car feels is just so level. There's no more of that body roll. It's awesome. It feels much better to me and the way I like to have cars perform. It definitely feels faster in the corners, but the real question, is it faster on the draggy? Let's find out. Hey, we're back and I got our numbers. And as you can tell, it just started raining. Man, I'll tell you what, this Florida weather is crazy. With that being said, this car drives so much better as far as any kind of back road handling, kind of, throwing this thing around left and right. Man, it is way more stable and flat, and I think very much more performance oriented over the factory sway bar, and I am 2 thumbs up with what a great job a 22mm rear sway bar with the upgraded end links does for these things. But that's feel. What do the numbers say? I didn't expect to reinvent the wheel with just an aftermarket sway bar and basically a stock car. We do have some numbers. There's some interesting finds. Let's get to it. Our personal best run previous from today was a 1.88 60 foot with a 4.93 0 to 60 and an 8.65 eighth mile trapping at 80 mile an hour. So let's talk about today's run. Today's run, we actually set a new personal best for 60 foot, going from a 188 to a 186. Pretty good, super psyched about that, and that may be contributed to the sway bar and to our end links. Here's where it goes a little sideways. Even though our 60 foot was personal best, it kind of starts to fall off a little bit from there. So the best run that we had up until this point was a 0 to 60 at 4.93. We clocked in at 5.05 today, and for our 8th mile, we went from an 865 personal best to today being an 870 flat. Wrapping that up with mile an hour, we trapped at 80.25, where today's best run was a 79.58. So what gives? We got a better 60 foot and I felt really good about the run, so why aren't we knocking out personal bests left and right? Well, today, I think weather is a factor here. If we go through all of the numbers that the Dragy gives us, when we set our personal best, we are at a 64 degree temperature outside with a DA of 409. Today, it's about 72 degrees, which is about an 8 degree warmer difference, and the most important part, unfortunately, the rain and the humidity has brought in a much higher DA of 1,301 feet, which makes a lot of sense on why we were able to get out of the hole a little bit faster with some of the upgrades, but unfortunately, weather conditions and DA and temperature just wasn't allowing us to roll through the back end. Either way, if it was about 10 degrees cooler out, I would absolutely put my money on that we would have done a personal best across the board today. Dialing this car in is really starting to feel good, and I like the way it's taking off, and I think we're almost ready to put some new power mods on this car. Unfortunately, we kind of ran into an issue with finding that the tires are kind of wonky on the rear of this thing, so unfortunately, tires and lower control arms and a real alignment on this car is probably next, just for safety. But once we knock that out, I think it's about time to put some real performance mods on this car and set some real new personal bests. What do you think? Well, gang, to bring it home, I thought this was an excellent video. I'm super excited with the way the car handles now with just the addition of the rear sway bar and the end links. And if you ask me if I would do this modification again, I would absolutely say yes. As far as I'm concerned, with the exception of a quality coilover setup, a nice rear sway bar is going to be absolute money for getting these cars to handle like you would expect a sports car to handle out on the road. If you have any questions about setting up your particular suspension on your car, drop a comment below, man. Maybe I can help you out with all kinds of good stuff. So for thousands of parts, just like everything you saw on the video today, hit up Import Image Racing for all the best deals on the web and in the world, and we'll catch you on the next one.